Welcome to this new episode of the What the World Needs Now series of the Moonchild Podcast show. And in this episode, I'm speaking to my mentor, Eileen Barker from California, about forgiveness. Welcome to the Moonchild Podcast with Miriam Maris. In this podcast, I'm taking you along on my path, shifting my own consciousness and living my life to the fullest, but at my own pace. Front row living, that is my goal, becoming the ultimate version of me. Ever since I was little, I always loved the energy of the moon. It feels soothing, it's slowing me down, and it's making me realize what's actually important to me. Love, connection, and freedom. So welcome. I hope you feel at home and inspired. Enjoy this ride with me. Hi and welcome to this episode of my series, What the World Needs Now. And today I'm speaking to Eileen Barker about forgiveness, one of my favorite subjects. And Eileen is my mentor who's taught me everything she knows, or at least I hope so. And I'm really grateful that she's here with us today. Welcome, Eileen.
Thank you, Miriam.
It's
so honored to be here and happy that you're doing this program. It's really great. And of course, I'm always happy to share about forgiveness. So,
yeah, I'm really to have you here.
Thank you.
So can you introduce yourself a little bit more than I just did?
Okay. Let's see. Where shall I start? I have been working in the area of forgiveness. Well, it's getting to be close to 20 years, but not quite. But 15 to 20 years. I came from a background in law and then I became a mediator, spent most of my career helping people resolve conflicts. And along the way, got very interested in forgiveness because I think it really is the ultimate tool for helping people resolve conflict and more not just resolve it, but really be at peace and actually repair relationships, restore good feelings and goodwill. And there's nothing else I know that can do that. And it's so sad to me to see how often, conflict is just left with people feeling really wounded forever, the rest of their lives, with carrying resentments. And so that is why I'm so passionate about forgiveness, because it's such profound medicine. And I do think it's what the world needs. Not just now, but always, but also now.
True. And I love the way you always say that. To me, it makes so much sense because you and we've seen all the divorce cases and how deep the wounds can be when they are left unresolved. And
which they usually are, right?
Yeah, usually. Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen it with my own parents who had they left a big wound in each other, and it took a long time I'm not sure if it's healed completely, but still, it took a long time to get to terms with that. And that's what I love about forgiveness too, that it actually really heals, and that it makes your life so much better to come from a place of forgiveness instead of a place of blame and hurt and resentment.
Exactly.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about what forgiveness actually means to you?
Yes, and of course, over the years, I've had many understandings of it and different definitions. But the one that I feel like is really closest to my heart right now and recently is that I think that our let's say that our natural state, but our potential, certainly what's possible is to live in a state of harmony, well-being, and love. And that it's really, in a sense, our birthright to know ourselves as loving individuals and to be in loving relationships. And yet how many people are actually experiencing that and able to achieve it? So for me, forgiveness is removing the things, whatever it is, that is separating us from love. It's removing everything that gets in the way, the resentment, the negative thoughts, the doubts, the fears, the stories, the beliefs, the wounds. It shows up in different ways in different situations, but it's fundamentally finding a way to not just let go. It's not like you just let it go. There is an element of letting go and forgiveness, but then you have to say, but how? But it's dissolving it, releasing it in an organic way, in a way that you just no longer want to hold on to it. And that can come in sometimes because we realize the price we're paying for holding on to our grievance, our grudge. And other times, it can come in other ways. But so the definition I'm giving you today, it's that forgiveness is letting go, releasing, resolving our wounds and our stories and whatever else is separating us from experiencing love and peace and harmony.
That's beautiful. And because when I first started working with you and forgiveness, I had this idea of forgiveness, and I hear this all the time still. So I was not the only one that forgiveness is about accepting what the other person did, or at least saying, oh well, you did this to me, but I'm going to forgive you. How do you feel about that? What's your reaction to that?
Right. I think there is a component of acceptance in forgiveness, but it's not just shrugging it off. I mean, that's, I think, sometimes the way people think about forgiveness. Well, I'll just let it go. It's not just letting. It's much deeper than that. It's really making peace with what's happened. Then we can accept what's happened. But making peace with it is really different from. I mean, there are small slights in life that I think it might be appropriate to just let go of it, because you realize, okay, it's not a big deal in the scheme of things. But I'm talking about things that really did hurt you. And I think that, there comes a time where to just shrug that off is dishonoring of yourself. So to honor your experience and your pain, which in the work I do, as you know, we don't bypass anything, we don't avoid anything, we really take it head on and honor the person's feelings and the pain. So while we want to make peace with what's happened, doesn't mean we're condoning it, doesn't mean we're saying, okay, we're not excusing it. We can say, this really is unacceptable to me. And in fact, sometimes people really, in doing forgiveness work, are also doing work on their boundaries to say, I'm not going to allow this anymore. I don't want this. This is not okay anymore. Yeah. And that can be really, really important. Otherwise, it's a free pass, which doesn't feel good if we just think same thing's going to happen again. So I think we have to really work through, our own feelings, as well as taking care of ourselves, as well as finding the way to make peace with what's happened.
Yeah.
And sometimes when people go into what they feel, because part of what we also in the same spirit of trying to, most of us are trying to take life deals us, many small insults every day, right? So we don't want to, part of being skillful as an adult is knowing how to just kind of move around them and not get
navigate through
the bed of thorns or whatever. But when something has really been difficult, especially with somebody important in your life, a family member, a spouse, there are times it's just not, it's not just letting it go. It's you want to address it in a way that's going to be healing for you and the other person ultimately.
Yeah. So that means that you can, if someone did something really nasty to you and it's unacceptable, you can even say, it's not okay what you did to me, but I'll forgive you because I want to make peace.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That makes sense. And it feels so much better than just accepting or just letting it go, or, something like that, because that feels inappropriate sometimes. If someone has really hurt you, then you can't just say, "Oh, I'll forgive you," and we're moving on.
Right, that's right. It would be dishonoring to yourself
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this work is really, in the work I do, it's really for the person doing the forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, whether or not you even tell the other person you're forgiving them is secondary.
Mm-hmm.
It's that what they did was really nasty and it really hurt me, but I am going to forgive them. And I'm doing that for me.
Right.
I'm not doing it for them.
Yeah. So forgiveness.
Yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
Forgiveness is primarily for yourself, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the reverse of that, hanging on to it, is so toxic, and the one it hurts is you. It doesn't really hurt the other person usually nearly as much as it hurts you. If you're angry, resentful, that has major health consequences for the person who's carrying those feelings.
Yeah.
And the other person does not really impact them usually that much at all. I mean, in some situations it might, but not as much. So you're doing it for you. It's not fun to carry around a lot of negativity, even though many of us are used to it. So
yeah,
we're accustomed to it, but it's not good for us. And it's not really, I think that we're capable of so much more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's like drinking something toxic and then expecting the other person to die, right? I always love that phrase, because that's exactly what holding a grudge, does to you. It's toxic for you. So in times of Corona, these are very special times for all of us. We're stuck in our homes. Sometimes with spouses, we're already, thinking like, is this the right person for me still? Or, a lot of people were already having a bit of a crisis in their relationship. But even if you're not, these are challenging times for us. So how can we use forgiveness in Corona times to make us feel better and feel more at peace?
Yeah, good question. I think that one of the things, I've been asking my students to really focus on some of the good things that are coming out of Corona and quarantine, some of the gifts, some of the opportunities, and people, because we know what we focus on expands, and if we focus on the future and the fears and who knows what's going to happen, it's not a good feeling. I'm not saying that we can ignore that, but we don't have to dwell on it. On the other hand, if you focus on some of the opportunities, it really can be very positive. And some people are talking about things like slowing down. It's given us the chance to slow down. It's given us the chance to spend more time with loved ones, with our kids, with our spouse. For some people, that's a good thing. For some people, maybe not. Maybe challenging. But to start trying to look at that, and along those lines, I think for many people, it's a chance. There's some reflection going on. I know people who are reflecting on their career path, and are they doing what they really want to do? And people who are thinking, I'd like to work more remotely and from home, or they just want to do a different. It's one of those times where you think about, I think naturally, what's really important and what's not. The formal terms, what are the essential jobs and what's not essential, but also in our lives, what's essential. We've all been forced to give up a lot of things and our normal activities. So we're kind of reduced to the essential. And what is that? And who is that? And so there's that kind of prioritizing that's happening that I think is really healthy and can go a long way in the direction of the forgiveness work. For example, what relationships are really serving me and which ones aren't? What relationships are really draining me and which ones feed me? And it is a time sometimes where, we want to really be discerning in that way. And then you're raising the question about spouses and how, what's working, what's not working. And I would say, so the question I would add for anybody in that situation is, what are my resentments? Where am I blaming? What do I need to forgive my spouse for? If you're in, I mean, if you've already decided you're going to, leave the marriage, that's different. If you've already made that decision. But if you're not sure, or if you're still in it, but you're struggling a bit, but you want to stay in, then I really would encourage you to look at what are the areas that you need to forgive, and how about for yourself? Where do you need to forgive yourself? And need to forgive them for, and what are the grudges, what are the resentments? Most of us have a backlog in our close relationships. I'm right now cleaning out my home office. I have a backlog of papers and files of 10 years of forgiveness programs and talks, and I thought, I want to refresh, I want to make room for something new. But we do this emotionally, and we do this emotionally too. And so we might have a backlog. If you've been in a relationship 10 years, say, or more, there's probably an accumulation. So this is a good time. And I think start with taking stock. What are the things that you're still hanging on to that happened, in the past? You could think about it like, what am I hanging on to that happened more than 6 months ago, or a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 5 years ago? Yes. And then you have something to work with, and you can start thinking about, how long do I want to hang on to this? But again, I know Miriam is not just saying, well, just let it go. That's not it. But first identify what it is, and where am I blaming? Because it's so much easier to blame others. As Miriam mentioned the other day, around Corona, there's so much blame whose fault is this? And it's a natural human tendency, but is it really helpful? Mm-hmm. Is it going to change anything? Not probably not. And in personal relationships, it's usually a lot of blame to go around. And I find that underneath all of our anger at other people, usually we hold a lot against ourselves. So when you make your inventory of what you're holding on to from the past that would be good to release and forgive, include yourself. What am I still blaming myself for? And what could I have done better that I want to, forgive myself for? Mm-hmm. And then, I teach a process of forgiveness. There are steps people can learn, which obviously we won't be able to go into on the podcast, but I can give you some directions to think in that can be helpful. What do I get out of this? What do I gain from holding this blame story? Mm-hmm. If I make somebody else wrong, and there's always a story to back it up, but those stories are quite arbitrary. And so, if you're willing to look at it, what am I gaining by blaming? That's a good question to ask. Yeah. Another good question to ask is what's this costing me? What price am I paying for? So maybe I get to be right, but mm-hmm. What price am I paying for that? Because we are usually paying a higher price than we realize. It could be a health price. It could be a happiness price.
Absolutely. All of that together too. So you're saying the first step is to make an inventory of, is there anything that I need to forgive myself or my spouse or one of my family members for? And do include yourself. And after that, you ask yourself, what am I gaining by blaming my spouse or myself for this and this and that? And the third question would be, what price am I paying? And is it on an emotional, physical, financial, whatever, spiritual level? So those are three.
And then I want to give a third question, if it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
What do I really, really want? Yeah. How do I really want it to be? And that might be the hardest question, because a lot of times we protect ourselves by saying, well, this is what I really want isn't possible. We have a way of shutting down our dream. Oh, it's not possible. It's too late. It's been too much, water under the bridge or whatever. But if we didn't listen to any of that, and you really said, what do I want? How do I want it to be?
Mm-hmm.
If I could have it the way I want, because, especially in these personal relationships, when, there's two people involved, you have a lot of power. And in the relationship, more than most people don't realize how much, most people feel powerless.
Mm-hmm.
That would be another thing to look at. How am I feeling powerless here? Most people believe that it is the way it is and there's nothing they can do about it. And so I want to say one more thing, something about that I think is really important. That in my work, usually in forgiveness, I'm only working with one person. So I might be working, with one spouse or one family member. And I tell them, we're not going to try to change the other person. That's not what this is about. It's understanding that you can, just by you doing this work, you can change the whole situation.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't realize they have the power to do it, but that is the truth. Just by doing your own work and doing your own releasing within yourself and coming back to the truth of your who you are and the love that is your birthright, you can move mountains.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I've experienced it myself in many ways. So it's also about reclaiming your own power, right? Going from powerless to powerful. And that I know, because of my own experience, how that changes your energy and your, energy is the right word, I guess. And also not your own energy, but also the energy you send out to that other person changes in a way that you can't even describe. And I remember the first process I did with you, Eileen,
Mm-hmm.
and even I think up until 6 weeks later, people were saying to me, like, what happened to you? What did you change? Is it your hair? Do you have new glasses? Did you buy new clothes? None of that happened. It was my energy that changed,
Yeah.
because I came back to me, and I reclaimed my own power in this situation that I was working on. And so I can only acknowledge how powerful it is to come back to you and to realize how much power you actually have, and shifting from powerless to powerful.
Empowered, I would say. And I just, as you were talking, Miriam, I remembered I just received this email that I'd like to share, that I think really underscores this point. This is from a woman who I'd never met. A friend sent her the workbook. It's a self-guided step-by-step workbook. And she said, previously, while attempting to read it, I would cry and I'd feel the energy of resistance so strong that, sorry, it's hard for me to see it, so strong, the reasons I created for delaying the radiance of my personal power. I recently set an intention to forgive my father and ex-husband. Yesterday, my dad sent a lengthy text message apologizing and asking for forgiveness. Mind blown. Last night, I had another massive breakthrough. I read through the entire workbook, and the experience felt empowering and peaceful. I dozed off around 3 a.m. and woke up in the morning to an email from my ex-husband. The tone of the email was different, and that was enough to let me know that the path towards freedom is very real.
Yeah.
Isn't that incredible?
That's incredible. I'm experiencing it too, actually, with my clients. One good example is one client I was coaching, and she didn't tell her husband that she was finishing up with the program. And the same day she finished the program, he bought her roses, which he hadn't done in a long time. And it's like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? And it's just the energy that
You shift the
changed.
energy, and
Yeah.
it's so powerful, and it's so beautiful. Yeah. I love it.
I can speak to you about this for hours.
Yes, I
But let's not go down that alley.
okay.
So I just want to rephrase a couple of questions that you mentioned.
Okay.
Besides the inventory and what am I gaming by blaming, what price am I paying? And then you said, what do I really want? How do I actually want it to be? And that, I think, for a lot of people is a hard question, especially when you're going up and down in your feelings, in your emotions, or direction of your thoughts. Do you have any tip on that? How to get clear on what you want?
Yes, it takes courage, especially once we feel like we've been hurt, to really say, I want to have a loving relationship when you feel discouraged. So it takes courage. Sometimes that's the role I mean, that is like working with you as a coach. I think that can help somebody who's supporting you in really tapping back into your heart. But that would be that would be how I would do it. I would get quiet. I might light a candle. Just to make this really, to honor the sacredness of reclaiming your dream, and then to really feel into your heart, not your head, but your heart. What do I really want to? You love this person and you want to have a reconciliation and you want things to be loving, and and we sometimes don't dare to hope.
Right.
And maybe we did, and then we feel like we got crushed. So to come back and not be too specific, but because it will show up how it doesn't necessarily show up exactly how we think, but to feel appreciated. I want to feel seen. I want to feel valued. I want to feel appreciated. In fact, you don't even have to say by whom. It could be by this person or somebody else,
Yeah.
or by, I want my husband to really see me again and bring me flowers, or my wife but to get back in touch with something very deep inside yourself. It's there, and sometimes we're a little guarded because we don't want to be hurt again. And I wouldn't just say, I'm not telling people to just be hopeful. I'm saying do the work. You have to do the work.
Right.
But I'm saying, a little, as you're saying, a little bit can go a long way.
Yeah.
But those are the things that, if you have a positive image of what you want that's different from the way it is, that can be motivating.
Absolutely.
And then roll up your sleeves and do your work.
Right. And then the last question you mentioned is, how am I feeling powerless?
Mm-hmm.
And do some work on that as well. So
Mostly that work is to realize that even though you may be feeling powerless, it's not true that you are powerless. Not true. So then it's like, how can I find my power? How can I reclaim my power, my personal power, not power over anybody, but my personal power,
right.
and be my empowerment,
So
which really comes out of this work, is you reclaim it. But then to hold that as almost a prayer or intention to reclaim my power.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
It's a deep subject, so
absolutely.
it is. Yeah.
But these are some good questions that listeners can actually ask themselves, and some good tips that they can work on, at least as a start, to find your way back to love, really.
Yes.
And so thank you for this.
You're so welcome. My pleasure.
My last question is always, if you have one tip. But we already covered so many tips, but maybe there's some highlight you want to point out that people can use in Corona times, and how they can use forgiveness. Is there one thing that you want to specifically mention?
If I had a book, and so I was thinking about that, and if somebody wants to really do the work, I do recommend the workbook, the forgiveness workbook, that is available digitally from thepathofforgiveness.com, because it is a guided process that you can do on your own. So I think that would be one tip. And other than that, I think it's this kind of inquiry for yourself of, what do I really want and where, it's sort of like, here's where I'm at and here's what's the grudges, the resentment, and just kind of get clear about that. And then, so here's point A, point B, here's where I want to be.
Mm.
And then you'll, the path will present itself. How do I get from here to there?
Right.
Yeah.
It takes courage to make that decision, though.
It does.
Yeah.
And I do recommend, I mean, you are a wonderful coach. And I know this isn't just to, highlight your work, but I do recommend that people contact you for support, because it's really hard sometimes to do this work alone.
True.
Ourselves, but having somebody there who's been through it, who can guide you, makes all the difference. So that's my pro tip. Just gotta go have coaching.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Eileen, for this wonderful interview.
My pleasure. Thank you for doing this.
To see and speak to you again, and I'll speak to you very soon. For more info, you can always check my website, Miriam with a J, Maris.com, or Google for Maris Coaching. I hope to see you soon. Bye.